Hey, Dad.
Hey, what?
Did you know Anchor distributes our podcast to Spotify and Apple Podcasts free of charge?
No way. Did you also know Anchor has everything you need to make a podcast, including tools and tips on how to grow your audience and fan base?
Yes! Anchor is the best way to start and grow your podcast for absolutely free. Make sure to check out Anchor and download the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Goodbye!
Hi.
Yes, sir. They just grow up so fast, don't they? Not fast enough. Gregory will now be talking to you years from now. Look back on this. Gregory, you the man. I imagine that it'll get to the point where they will want me to say that. So, anyway, look at you. You're so handsome.
Welcome back to another episode of The Rhodes Less Traveled. I am the driven Declan Rhodes, and this is the first episode without my dad, Gregory Rhodes. Before we get into the meat of today's episode, I just want to first and foremost thank every single person who has been so incredibly kind and understanding and supportive to me and my family during the last 5 months of our life without Gregory. When I started this project, I knew that this day would come, and I knew that this time would be upon me. And here we are. That time has come, and it has passed with Gregory's passing. I'm not sure if I personally believe in an afterlife, or what that looks like in my own self journey as a human being right now. But what I will say is that I know without a doubt that he is in a much better place and is in no longer any more earthly pain than when he was in his body down here. So that's all I will say about that. And if you want to continue along listening to this podcast, I have an exciting and hopeful announcement, if you are able to make it to the end, about what the future of this project, The Rhodes Less Traveled, will look like moving forward without Gregory. And I think that he would be proud and excited to see where it goes and where it takes me and everything. So, without further ado, here are some anecdotes and testimonials from people who were touched by Gregory. I will also say that I'm including what was going to be the final recording of Dad and I's podcast episode for this, but unfortunately it did not end up happening. His health declined too rapidly, and we were not able to necessarily record a full episode together. With that said, I do have several recordings of him telling stories from the hospital and his last couple weeks of life that I will not be releasing fully in this episode, but in future episodes when I am wanting to do more of a full memorial episode for Gregory Charles Rhodes. I will say that I want this episode to serve as a catapult into the next phase of The Rhodes Less Traveled, and as a somewhat send-off and goodbye to what this wonderful project started off as, which was getting to know who my father was and what kind of person he turned out to be, despite every single hurdle he came into in his life. So, with all of that said, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy hearing how so many people were touched by Gregory Charles Rhodes. Thank you. Okay. Yes, we are all set up. Hello, hello. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Stop that. Okay.
Welcome back to another episode of The Roads Less Traveled. I am the daring Declan Rhodes, and that...
The Gregarious. Gregory.
Yes, indeed it is. We have a few special guests with us today for today's episode. If you want to go ahead and make yourselves known, fam bam.
The marvelous McKenna.
The awesome Aiden.
I got nothing.
Okay.
The mom. Christy.
You have a K word you want to throw in front of that
No,
first?
I can't think of one.
Okay.
The kind Christy.
Okay.
Yes,
It works. That works. Yes. So today's episode is kind of going a little off our regular main course where we talk about Gregory's life and in chronological order. And instead, today we just wanted to focus on, some important questions and important statements that I think we'd all love to hear, not only as a family, but as, our wonderful listeners out there. So my sister, the ever-amazing McKenna, has come up with some incredible questions I think that all of us would love to hear the answers to. So yeah, Kenna, if you want to just start with any question and we can just discuss as a family or
Okay.
hear what Dad has to say.
I've always heard this story from Mom, but I kind of wanted to hear your point of view about how you guys met. How did you and Mom meet?
We met at Midnight Rodeo.
I don't think that club is still there now, is it?
No, it still exists. It still exists, just not in the same location.
Oh, okay, that's right. Midnight Rodeo still exists in Springfield, but not at the place where it is. Where was it at in Springfield?
There used to be a plaza over by the Walmart on South Campbell, the Supercenter, where Gordman's is. That used to all join together and was a plaza, and it was in the corner of that plaza. That's where they were located.
Okay.
And then when they tore that down, they had to move, and they moved to their current location on Glenstone.
Gotcha. Okay, so we want to know how you and Mom met at Midnight Rodeo. Place of Dreams.
How did that happen for you? Do you remember?
Yeah.
How did we meet?
What do you remember about being at Club Rodeo? Midnight Rodeo, I should say.
Why were you there?
There.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why were you there?
I was there to line dance and
But you were celebrating something that night, weren't you? Do you remember?
Were you there with anyone else?
Who were you there with?
my roommate.
Okay.
Do you remember his name? Was this James?
Yeah.
James. So you were still at SMS. You're with James. You're with anyone else?
Was Pam there too?
Yeah.
Pam? Then how did you end up coming up to me? That smile on your face. How did you end up coming up to me? Remember? Do you remember
What?
how you ended up coming up to me? What you did? Came up and asked me to dance. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And what happened? Remember? We talked all night. Remember that? And I drove you home. You didn't have a car.
Do you remember, was there a reason specifically that you went up to Mom?
Do you remember if there was a specific reason you came up to me to ask me to dance that night? Where are you going? Why did you decide to come up to me to ask me to dance? You remember? You need to sit up?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to move your legs? What do you need to do? Want to uncover? You get hot? Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Bend your legs up. There you go. Is that better? What do you remember about the night we met? I'm gonna try a different question. Oh my goodness, it's a lot of questions.
We're going to move on to a different question, just to get a gauge of how things are going. I think Aiden has a question he'd love to ask.
Hey, Dad. What do you think your biggest accomplishment in life was?
Did you hear him?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Biggest accomplishment, what do you think?
I know you've done a lot of great things. Oh, we have a visitor. Give us 1 second.
Hello.
That ended up being the final recording for this specific podcast that the family and I were able to make while Gregory was still here with us. As you can hear in those final recordings of us talking to him, his body was fighting so hard, and the cancer was unfortunately a little too strong, and you can just hear how tired he is in his voice, and how much he's really hanging on in those final recordings. Up next, I have some voice recordings of people who came to visit Gregory while he was in the hospital and just wanted to share what he meant to them and what it was like getting to know Gregory. So I just want to go ahead and thank Drew H., Brian Smithson, and Pam Dennis for lending their voices to this next segment of the Roads Less Traveled. Thank you.
But you can say whatever you want, just long, short, sweet, whatever you...
No, I'll start crying when I do it. I close my eyes when I say it. Just one take?
Yep. Or I mean, I can cut and paste.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Is it running now?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
No, you good, Drew.
Okay. I don't know if I can do this. I gotta do it for Greg. Gregory was a man that he didn't know a stranger, and he was never judgmental of anyone, always willing to help. No matter what he had to do, he would help. A person that always had a smile on his face. Didn't know he taught me what kindness is, in that always being ready to be a servant is what we all need to do. Gregory will be missed. Thank you for being a part of my life, Gregory Rhodes.
Greg, buddy, it's Brian Smithson. It was so fun working with you. We have a lot of memories, and I tell a lot of stories about our good times. I appreciate you standing strong in your faith and staying grounded always. You were a lot of fun, buddy. Stay safe and rest well.
Met Gregory 1993, and he's been family ever since. He has a pure heart. He is always a joy to be around, and we just love him. We love him. You can go days, years, months without seeing or speaking to him, and then when you see him, it picks right back up where you left off. So you couldn't meet a better person, a more genuine person. I know he loves his family dearly, and I know he's created his own family as well. And so we are lucky to be considered a part of that.
Again, I would like to thank every single person who lent their voice to that small little segment portion of this podcast episode, and thank you for sharing what my father meant to you and how he impacted your life and the positives throughout this tragic loss that we've all experienced together. Last but not least, I would like to share a message that one of Greg's best friends from college, James Dennis, we've mentioned many a time on this podcast, his college roommate, James Dennis, sent me this message as kind of a remembrance of Gregory and what their friendship looked like and how it blossomed. So I'm just going to read this to you, and thank you for listening. Greg and I met during college in the summer of 1993, where we both were enrolled in the same history class. We made a pact that one of us would always stay awake during class. So, every other day, the other one got to sleep. That is what sparked our original friendship. From there, we began to hang out, more inevitably becoming roommates, and working together at what is now Mercy Hospital. We were after the same degree, so the majority of our classes we had together, and when we weren't in class together, we were most likely at Midnight Rodeo, trying to show other people how to dance, because we were so amazing in our minds. Greg helped me to be able to meet others because he was way more outgoing than I ever was. Once our lives started getting busier with careers and families, we didn't see as much of each other, but every time we saw each other, we picked up right where we left off. Telling stories, talking about people we knew, where people were, that we went to school with. When we had big life-changing experiences, we would call each other and talk about them. He is an amazing husband, father, and friend. If you have managed to make it to the end of this podcast episode, thank you very much for listening and tuning in. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support, kindness, and love throughout this entire journey, this process, and this very sad loss of someone who meant so much to so many people around the world. With all of that said, my somewhat exciting announcement and phase of life for this project and podcast moving forward is this. I think one thing my father was always enamored by was my ability to interview him and ask thought-provoking questions and have critical analysis and try and have conversation that maybe not a lot of other people were having. And so what this has led to is an ability of mine that I take pride in trying to understand people and connect with them and just look around inside their brains, what makes them them, what makes their human experience different from my human experience, yada, yada, yada. So, following down the theme of the roads less traveled, it started with exploring Gregory's past and his life and how someone could come from some of the most horrible situations and be given the worst kind of treatment imaginable from people who were supposed to be close to him. And now it has delved and shifted into, I think, my own roads less traveled that I would like to go down. So with that said, every episode moving forward, besides the occasional check-in with the family or remembrance of Gregory, don't worry, I've got some more audio recordings of him, and they will be coming out when the time is right, I believe. But with all that said, I want to move forward with each episode focusing on a person in my life, an artist, a colleague, a friend, an acquaintance, maybe even a complete stranger. I want to get to know more people around the world and just open this up to everyone's road less traveled, taken, however you see it. So every episode moving forward will be an interview with a different person, which I think is exciting. And I already know the first several people I will be interviewing for this next phase of life of this podcast, which is very exciting. I have been very fortunate and thankful and grateful to meet so many people and also work with so many badass, incredible people. And I think that there are so many people that I just would love to get to know more and interview them in this kind of intimate setting. And yeah. So I think that is it. And if you've made it this far, again, thank you for listening. And I think my final checkout for this remembrance episode, the first one without my dad, will simply be that I love you, Dad, and I miss you every single day, and I wish you were still here. And sometimes I look around and I say it's not fair. It's not fair that you were taken so soon. It's not fair that my siblings and my mother have to grow the rest of their lives without their husband and father. And I just have to remind myself that, unfortunately, one of the things of the human experience is that life isn't fair. And if there's anyone that knew that, it's you. You grew up in very unfair conditions, and yet, despite everything you faced as a child, you came out on top. And you made a life for yourself, a very successful and comfortable and safe life for yourself. And for that, I am eternally grateful. So everyone listening at home, thank you. And I love you. I'm sending you love and light. And so is Gregory.